Support this podcast via our Patreon and get more writerly goodness. Visit patreon.com/nanocast to join up.
Welcome to NaNoWriMo Every Month. My name is J. Daniel Sawyer. I'm the author of some 20 books, 34 short stories, and numerous articles and other things, and I am your guide on this journey to use NaNoWriMo to level up to professional output levels. Welcome to The Questions, Episode 19. We've got another one from Sgt Mike today. Sgt Mike has been a prolific asker of questions, and thank you so much, Sgt Mike. Please keep sending in questions, all of you. The questions are what feed this podcast. Sgt Mike asks, any thoughts on marketing your book once you're ready to publish it? Yes, I do have some thoughts on that, and you're not going to like them. It's the way that we are primed to think about product development, particularly from the way we see movies done, is that you make something, you release it on the market, and you market the shit out of it. You market the shit out of it, you extract maximal value from it, and then you drop it and you move on. That way of doing things is predicated on a particular business model that does not obtain with books. And it particularly does not obtain with books post-ebook revolution. Before the ebook revolution, there were physical constraints on the printing and distribution of books that made that sort of blockbuster thinking necessary for the business to proceed. Now that we have infinite shelf space and print-on-demand paper books, including hardbacks, and ebooks, that sort of thinking is just not relevant. Marketing your book as if it's an event is not something that is important to your business plan most of the time. And that's just a hard, cold, brute fact of the universe that might leave you feeling a little bit at sea, but it does free you up to be a lot more strategic. Here's why. Marketing anything is difficult. Marketing something that's taste-based, that's optional, that's not an essential part of someone's life, that is a frivolity, which entertainment is, and we're all entertainers. Marketing that kind of thing is a very kind of rarefied art. It takes the right combination of marketing savvy and moxie and opportunity and money and the right fit of campaign to property. There's really no good answer of how do I market a book, because every book, particularly every fiction book, is so unique in the sorts of audiences it will appeal to that each one is a different question. And that's part of the reason why marketing fiction to this day is not something that is done well by even large companies. Marketing nonfiction, whole other kind of thing. Marketing nonfiction is dead easy because you're appealing to interest groups that are very well defined, and you know where to go find those people. Marketing fiction is hard, it's expensive, and it's a gamble. So, with that in mind, here's what the new world gives you the opportunity to do. It gives you the opportunity to not market except when the marketing will do you some good. And you can avoid all the crap around marketing and the distraction and the time sink and the expense until you've got a book that's lined up with the zeitgeist, that's got some kind of momentum going on culturally that you can hook into and capitalize on, and particularly when that moment comes along when you've got 10 or 20 or 30 other books on the shelf, that gives you the opportunity for leverage. Leverage is one of the most important concepts in business, particularly in intellectual property businesses, and it's one of the least appreciated by people who are new to the game. Leverage is what you have whenever you can accomplish two or more things by doing one thing. The more things you can accomplish with the one thing, the greater your leverage is. So if you've got a series that's 12 books long, and you have the opportunity to be in a book bundle, which is a fantastic marketing opportunity that pays you as well, which is great, and you put book 1 of that 12-book series in the book bundle, or maybe book 5, some kind of natural on-ramp, and you hook people on that series, a certain percentage of the people who buy the bundle will read your book, and a certain percentage of them will love it, those people will go back and look for the other books in the series. That's leverage. Marketing the first book in a series when you've only got the one book, not very smart use of your time or resources. Marketing the first book in a series when you've got the series done or you've got 5 or 10 books into a very long-running series, that's starting to look like a lot better sync for your time and investment. Your sense of urgency of wanting to see your investment in time and effort writing this book pay off, that's one of the first things you need to learn to let go. It simply doesn't happen but once in a blue moon, when you're very lucky and you happen to release a book that hits the zeitgeist, that's the spirit of the times, that just is at the culturally precisely exact moment for that book to be popular. Some recent examples are The Martian. Andy Weir's The Martian was a zeitgeist book. It was a great read. I had a lot of fun. It was definitely a first book. It's written like it was a first book. It's written like a very humorous and snarky survival simulation. The characters are kind of thin. The plot's basically just a series of problems. You can see all the furniture moving, but it doesn't matter because it's such a fun read. But the fact that it's a fun read is not the major reason it caught on. The major reason it caught on is that we're in a new space age, and we don't have the mythos to drive us forward. And Andy Weir stepped into that major market gap with a fun, engineering-minded, hard science fiction book that has a can-do attitude, and it fed a hunger that was in the culture right now. I was one of the people that was hungry. I fucking loved that book. But I didn't love it because Andy Weir's a great writer. I loved it because Andy Weir wrote the book that I was aching to read. Things like that happen to first-time writers. They don't happen often, and when they do happen, they can ruin your career because when your follow-up book doesn't do as well, and it never does as well, then you're left wondering what happened, and you may quit. In the old days, your follow-up book doesn't do as well, you may get dropped by your publisher. Now that won't kill your career, but the dispiriting letdown of book number 2 can make you quit. But those first-time super hits are so rare that chasing them is not worth your time. You get that first book out there, I know what it feels like. I know you want to see everybody love it. I know you want to hear people talking about it because you've poured your heart and soul into it. But I'm 20 books in now, and I have begun to see in practice what I had learned in principle earlier on, the power of leverage. In fact, I'm running long, but I'll give you my personal journey on this because it might help. My first novel that I released to the public was called Predestination. It's a science fiction spy thriller, Tom Clancy-esque, big, broad in scope, very technical, very dark, lots of spy games, lots of fun. It's the flagship of a series that I continue to write to this day, and I absolutely love. I sat down when I finished writing that book, and I spent a year trying to get it published. And then, when I sort of got tired of that game, I kept it in the mail, but then I decided I'll podcast it. And being someone who had a production studio, I went and I did a full cast audiobook production and podcast the book. And I had a blast. I had so much fun. There were feedback shows. The podcasts are still available. You can go listen to them. Had a great time, and I got to the end of the podcast, and wouldn't you know it, I didn't have another book written. I poured all the time I would have spent writing into that podcast. And it paid off amazingly in that I had 10,000 weekly listeners. I had people emailing me every day, beating down my door for when's the next book, when's the next story, we want more. And I was able to pull out another book fast enough in the form of Down from 10 that I was able to keep those people on board and even grow the audience a bit through another book, but it wasn't the next book in that series. I was putting these things out as fast as I could write them. And podcasts and things like that are what's called a loss leader in marketing technology. I was sinking a lot of resources, time, money, energy, personal capital into these things, and they paid off in adulation. They didn't pay off in money because I didn't have anything to sell. The loss leader wasn't leading anybody anywhere. And I got to the point where Down from 10 was done, and I was trying to spin up the next book, and the book was too big for me. And so I couldn't keep podcasting because I couldn't keep writing fast enough to do it. And so I had to stop. And then, to get back into podcasting, that was even more difficult because when I stopped, my productivity as a writer went way up. Because all that time and effort and creative energy I was sinking into the podcast, I was putting into places that paid off much better. I always wanted to get back to podcasting, but it took me a journey of years to get to the point where I was able and willing and competent to go back and really commit to it, because I had now enough stuff on the market that in podcasting, I would not only acquire new listeners, but I could acquire new fans who would buy my other stories or at least be willing to check them out. And that's a leverage point. Now that I've got this backlist of books, now that I've got the writing discipline under control and can produce even under incredibly stressful circumstances like I've had to deal with in 2015 personally, adding back in the podcasting, that's a smart marketing move for me. But at the beginning of my career, when I did it and I killed it and I had tremendous luck, it was a very bad move from a business standpoint at that point. And it was a bad move creatively because it held up my writing and my development as a writer for a further couple of years beyond what it would have otherwise done. All of this is to say that you are probably better off not marketing your first book. Unless you're one of the lucky people who's got that zeitgeist novel and you're damn sure and everybody around you is telling you this is a zeitgeist novel, then it might be worth trying for because, hey, piles of money, right? Otherwise, you're better off waiting until you've got opportunities for leverage. Network with other writers, engage your fans on a small scale, build that base that will sustain you. Then, when you're ready to launch a major marketing campaign for a specific book or a specific series, that marketing campaign will pay off in the long run for you a lot more, and the time, money, and effort you put into it will be worth it. As far as specific things to do for good marketing campaigns, I can't recommend anyone better at this than Joanna Penn. She is fantastic. Her podcast is The Creative Pen, and she is a marketing genius. Someone else to look at as an example rather than as a teacher, because Joanna Penn is both a good example and a good teacher, is Scott Sigler. Scott Sigler is an incredible example of very smart marketing. He used to work in advertising. Dude knows his stuff. Those are the two people I would direct you towards right out of the gate for marketing. Other than that, the best thing you can do to market, and this is genuinely true, is to write the next book. Every time you release, you pop up on new release lists. It gives you a chance to catch new readers who you would never come into contact with otherwise. And the more books you have released, the more opportunities you have to be reviewed, the more opportunities you have for people to link back to you. You will naturally grow a presence by writing as best you can and releasing as well as you can and moving on until you are at such a point where you can take one of the stars of your bookshelf and say, okay, buddy, it's time for you to shine. And you can put a lot of muscle behind that, and that will lead people to all your other books. Leverage strategy is the way to go. And that wound up being a lot longer than I expected it again. Man, Mike, you tend to ask really good questions. They're very short, but they have very involved answers. So thank you for sending them in, and I will see all of you guys tomorrow. NaNoWriMo Every Month is written and presented by J. Daniel Sawyer and produced by Artistic Whispers Productions. Visit our website at NaNoWriMoEveryMonth.com and leave a tip in the tip jar to support this podcast. NaNoWriMo Every Month is copyright 2015 by J. Daniel Sawyer and Artistic Whispers Productions and released under a Creative Commons Attribution Non-Commercial No Derivatives license.